every once in a while, my cat makes a guest appearance in Zooms. I don't think it's quite as cute as when little kids come into the screen, but
Okay, I think we're all set. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this live chat with Jeanette Rausch, who is the Managing Director of Marketing at NYC and Company. We're going to talk about sustainable travel. So fantastic, Jeanette. So everybody, please feel free to put your questions into the chat, and we'll be monitoring and managing that for our conversation. And I just wanted to start out, first of all, thank you so much, the New York City and Company as our sustainable travel and tourism partner for Climate Week this year. And I would love to know what you guys have planned for the week.
So this is the second year that we've been partners on this program. And the way that we're leaning into it this year is with our partner at the Javits Center. So last year, the Javits Center, which has a variety of, green and sustainable initiatives, including things like their green roof, which is 19 acres, just like this enormous, making honey on the roof, reducing their own carbon emissions and energy use. So they, and Alan Steele, who's the president and CEO of the Javits Center, is also the head of our sustainability committee on our board. So they came to us and said, we want to get more involved in Climate Week and actually put together a number of concurrent conferences as part of the week. And they put this under the umbrella term, the Nest. And so last year we were able to do, it was the before times. So it was an in-person conference where we all five conferences had a joint keynote, went off into our separate breakout rooms, and then came back together at the end of the conference for a food waste lunch. And then went on, there was a food waste exhibition that was happening at the same time. We were all able to attend. So this year, the same thing is happening. It's actually even bigger than it was a year ago. So last year it was 1 half day of sessions. This year it's 4 days of sessions. It's all being produced by a partner that Javits brought on board called Next Events. And so we will have one session within this larger group of sessions. It is taking place on Thursday. God, I'm losing days of the week anymore, right? I'm like, every single day is the same, when you never leave your bedroom. But it's going to be terrific. So Adam Lake from the Climate Group is actually going to come and give, a keynote address for us. And then our president and CEO, Fred Dixon, will be doing a fireside chat with Mark Chambers, who is the, director of sustainability for the city of New York. And then our corporate partner is Mastercard. So Miguel Gamino, who actually used to be the chief technology officer for the city of New York, is going to talk about the work that Mastercard is doing through their Global Cities program to, promote sustainability and also, kind of economic equity throughout the city.
Right. No, fantastic. Yeah, we're great. It's great to be partnering with you and with Nest. And I understand that's all virtual, although I did see the Lieutenant Governor. She was on the roof the other day looking at the green roof.
Video too. So they, Javits, in response to this, because obviously, a lot of conferences and conventions aren't able to be in person this year. So they have put in almost a hybrid virtual/live event studio in the Javits Center. Because I think one positive thing about what's happening right now is that all of these conferences are more accessible than they ever were. And that's going to continue. This is going to be, we like to say that the recovery is gradual but certain. And part of the gradual part is, we want to make sure that we can continue the good work of people all over the world being able to, learn from all of these keynote sessions and chats and what have you. So their virtual conference studio allows you to it's set up like a TV studio. So if we were doing the event there, we would be in person being filmed by multiple cameras. And there's the option for people to be in attendance not right now, but in the future when, the restrictions on gatherings open up. And then, so you can both watch it like you're watching a TV show or a Zoom chat, but also be there in person. So the Javits Center, they never closed because they were acting as a field hospital back in April and May. So This is just part of their gradual pivot back to hosting events.
Right. I mean, so obviously we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So has the COVID crisis impacted the way New York City's been managing its sort of promotion and its ability to pivot towards sustainable travel and sort of the whole sustainability initiatives that you've undertaken?
It's Mark Chambers actually had a great quote about this that I read a few days ago, that it's the way that the city came together and exhibited, ingenuity when it comes to handling the COVID crisis is infinitely replicable. So we can take that same energy, the same, like when push comes to shove, we're going to figure stuff out. And we can now take that and apply it to, other crises that the city is facing. So I know from his perspective, it is, his office is full steam ahead when it comes to meeting the sustainability goals for the city. These were outlined in a document called One NYC. So work towards becoming 80% carbon neutral by 2030 are still absolutely moving forward. His office is doing work to examine landmarked buildings and determine how to best retrofit them for sustainability and to reduce their carbon emissions. So all of that is still happening. But there's also work that his office has had to do with addressing things like extreme heat that are, a consequence of climate change. So they are, distributing, air conditioners to the elderly who can't access a cooling center, because that, in the age of COVID, isn't always the best option for everybody.
Right. Yeah, it's a very interesting challenge, but of course, New Yorkers are resilient, and clearly we're very focused on the sustainability component that obviously the city leadership has been driving. I know there's also a lot of work out in the 5 boroughs, right? I mean, we have 5 boroughs. So what how are you tracking, or how are we able to track sort of the sustainability? We have an initiative of Climate Action is Our Business also to make sure the businesses that are the most sustainable in the city are getting the attention they deserve and driving folks there. But so how are you able to track the sustainability initiatives?
So we have we're a membership organization, and our goal is to encourage exploration of all 5 boroughs of New York City, and to spread the dynamic image of NYC across the world. So as part of that, we want to give tools to our 2,000 member businesses to make sure that they can, have sustainable practices and that they have access to the tourist, ecosystem. So as part of that, like when you guys put together that program, we were able to talk about it with our members and encourage them to sign up in order to learn more. So we can't necessarily dictate what individual members are doing, but in terms of new green sustainable hotels opening up, individual businesses doing things like on March 1st, which was the worst timing ever, that's the day the city's ban on plastic bags went into effect. And so I'm now, and that got, that was weird for a few months. I'm not sure businesses knew what they were supposed to be doing. And then gradually that has ramp back up. Where now when I go out and I go shopping, and of course I'm bringing my own bags anyway, but you're not seeing as many plastic bags running around the city anymore. So it's incrementally happening, but absolutely still taking effect.
Yeah. So a question from the chat is, as New Yorkers or even tourists coming to this fabulous city of ours,
Yes.
how can we all support the city during COVID, and as well as keeping people safe and sustainable practices in mind?
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of supporting the city, and that is a very important part of our mission. So we are, if you look at the UN SDGs about being sustainable, isn't just the obvious be green, don't be wasteful things. It's also the spreading economic, prosperity and benefits to folks. And that's a very important part of what we're doing. As part of our partnership with Mastercard, we actually just launched a program that's called All In NYC Neighborhood Getaways. And so we're encouraging people to explore all 5 boroughs by highlighting what our individual member businesses are offering to people who want to come out and want to spend money and want to support them. And then Mastercard gives you a statement credit if you've registered your Mastercard in advance of going to these businesses. So, right now we look at tourism as being hyper local. Back over the summer, it was very much about, okay, what is safe to do? Everything that we do is absolutely in line, with health and safety protocols of the city and of the state. But, there was in June that opportunity to say, yes, you can open your front door now. You don't have to only order delivery. You can go and dine outside at a restaurant. And we want to, encourage people to do so. So it's making sure that we are, lifting up those businesses. As part of encouraging people to leave and go outside and spend money, we had a partnership with the Public Art Fund over the summer. It actually just ended this past Sunday. So the Public Art Fund commissioned artworks from 50 artists who live in the 5 boroughs for their response to the pandemic. And then as part of that response, they created art. And then we, with our partner and your partner, JC&Co., put that artwork on. We did an installation on 500 bus shelters throughout the city. We then had a map to those shelters on our website, which included a way to explore if you were, to spend a day in Bay Ridge. Here are restaurants and other things in the area that you can do, without venturing too far from home. Then as the city got a little safer and we flattened the curve and, the subway cleaning protocols began, it's like, great, the subway is now a safe way for us to travel around the city. You can go a little further afield. We created a program on our website that we call All in NYC Public Art Edition. And it highlights 50 different pieces of public art that you can explore throughout the 5 boroughs. And then, with the same idea of once you leave your house, it's a little easier to, stop in and, get a cup of coffee someplace, have a safe, distanced outdoor meal somewhere and help support these local businesses. So that's been a big part of what we've been encouraging as well.
Right. And you were saying earlier that local businesses really are the backbone of New York City. And we also saw often that they are critical in some of the more the economically, disadvantaged areas of the city to make sure that they are, thriving. How are you sort of combining the sustainability and sort of the environmental justice issues that we've been seeing too around the city this summer and going forward?
I think the city has done great work over this summer with expanding the City Bike program. So that's the name of, New York's, bike share opportunity. And so I live in Harlem, and starting in June, they, expanded these, bikes. So they're now north of 110th Street, and, people in my neighborhood can now access the bikes. That's a terrific way to travel around the city. But there's also a component of, to use a city bike, you need to have a credit card in case you were to, lose the bike or steal the bike. They want to charge you $1,000 for having done so. So that's not necessarily equitable to people who don't have access to credit. So I know that is some of the work that Citibank and Mastercard have done, is to make sure that there is access to credit in communities where that isn't always the case. And then to also make the bike share program available with your EBT card. So even if you do not have access to credit, there are still ways that you can access this sustainable and safe way to travel around the city.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I think we got a couple other questions. One, something else about the plastic bag. So I don't know whether you're able to answer this, because we, people do see, those of us that are going out and about, that there are still, plastic bags being used. So can you just respond to that sort of really?
I'm guessing I am not, NYC and Company is a quasi-governmental agency. We don't necessarily, we have a contract with the city. We're not city employees per se. So I'm not fully up in the, how do we track if businesses are using plastic bags and what should we be doing about it? Personally, I have the 311 app on my phone. I think that would be a reasonable way to report it if you wanted to report it to somebody. It may be also worth just having a conversation with the business owner. If it's, like a bodega where the owner of the business is actually the person behind the counter. I think in some cases, people thought that these would be, we would stop using them at the beginning of March, and they may just be, after being closed for so long, they may be running through the rest of their inventory.
Yeah. Well, it definitely feels like the businesses in New York are definitely becoming much more sustainable because also people are requiring it too.
Yes.
Can you just talk, I think we just have a couple more minutes left, but I know you talked about the public arts program. We know that there's also Sound Walk happening in
yes.
Central Park, which is really interesting with the New York Philharmonic. Are there some other things that you can share, sort of sustainable practices as we head into the winter, which will be sort of a different opportunity for
it's
New Yorkers?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be, difficult in the winter, even from a COVID perspective, right? Like we are just able to this weekend. We're thrilled that indoor dining can return again in New York City at a 25% of capacity. But I know the city is taking into account, like, how do we keep people safe while still encouraging them to dine out during the winter months? And I don't think that is a thorny issue that is not completely solved yet, probably above my pay grade. But when you look at, how do we, in other countries and other cities, you can use a propane tank to, as a heater to heat outdoor dining patios. That's not something that is being allowed in the city at that moment. You have to actually be hardwired into the gas line in order to legally have, heating for your outdoor dining. So that may have an effect of being more challenging for these small businesses, for these restaurants who can't pack them in when it comes to dining inside. But we also don't want to take steps backwards when it comes to, we don't necessarily, it may not be a good idea to have, propane heated outdoor dining, throughout the winter. So that's not an area where I have any expertise, but I know that it is a constant conversation amongst their members and with, the city officials who are determining what's the best way forward with that. But I'd say certainly anything that you can do to support these small businesses is so crucial right now. The restaurants in particular, it's not ever easy to run a restaurant anywhere, certainly not in New York City. And then now when you can't be at 100% of, occupancy, it's very difficult. So anytime that you can do takeout or, anything that supports these businesses is great.
Right. And then we know the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has made some significant commitments towards sustainability. And obviously they manage all 5 airports in the major metropolitan region. And I know we chatted a bit about, airline travel, which clearly is a big issue for folks as we think about the environmental footprint. So sort of what is your response to, air travel coming into Manhattan and sort of the pros and cons from a sustainable travel point of view?
Adam Lake gave a keynote speech at the event we hosted at Javits last year. And I was really struck by something he said, where he's like, being sustainable doesn't have to mean wearing a hair shirt. There is inherent good to travel and tourism in terms of making the world a smaller place, introducing people to other ways of life. Like, travel is not going to disappear. It will take a while, but there is going to be a recovery of tourism, and this is ultimately a good thing. generally when we're selling the city, for example, to meeting planners or people looking to book a convention, we talk about, that the majority of carbon emissions from a flight comes from takeoff and landing. So the more times you can take a direct flight as opposed to a connecting flight, the smaller your carbon footprint from your trip will be. And New York City in normal times has a huge number of direct flights, more than many other destinations. So it's absolutely possible to come here. You're not going to rent a car when you come here. You can take the subway, you can take City Bike. Port Authority is working on extending travel options to LaGuardia. So when that is able to finally happen, you'll be able to take, a train directly, into Jamaica, Queens, and then into the city, kind of further reducing the number of cars on the road. And once you're here, you can, New York tap water is the best in the world. There's, no need to, buy plastic bottles of, water when you're out shopping. You can travel around the city sustainably. You can stay at a sustainable hotel. You can do walking tours of things across the city. There's a number of ways that you can keep, reduce your footprint while still enjoying, everything the city has to offer.
Yeah, no, great. And with a lot of innovation, we will soon have, zero emission fuel to power our airplanes. So I think there's a lot of investment going into that. So I'm happy about that. Okay, I think we are at time. So Jeanette, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you again for your support. And we can say we're going to be the most sustainable city in the world, as well as the most vibrant city in the world. Right. There's a lot more to do, but I think we're all in this together to do it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me, Amy.
Okay. Bye, Jeanette.
Bye-bye.